Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fight for Liberty Live. I seem to have shifted the last few weeks from elected officials within the party to candidates within the party, and we're going to keep up that path this week with the wonderful Joseph Bishop-Henchman. He is running for chairman of the Libertarian National Committee. He is the VP of Tax Policy and Litigation at the National Taxpayers Union. He worked with the Tax Foundation in multiple campaigns and on elected and appointed position official staffs. He's got a great, impressive policy reputation. So please join me in welcoming Joseph Bishop-Henchman.
Great to be with you, David. So,
hey, to the show. Thanks for coming on.
My record is an hour-and-a-half Q&A on C-SPAN Washington Journal with no commercials. So we'll see. I think we're beating that tonight. So it's a new record.
I tried to go as close to Joe Rogan as I could. 3 hours is way too long, but I think 2 is a nice sweet spot.
I like the backdrop there. It's very
thank you.
Very modern.
So I like to start off all the shows with just asking kind of your testimony, how you came to the Libertarian Party, who got you involved, and what's kept you active and hungry to move up.
Yeah, I was a teenager and I came across the Libertarian Party table at the San Diego County Fair and picked up some material and talked to some folks, and it just kind of made sense to me. So ended up joining after that. Of course, you know, that's the Libertarian Party. I guess I've always kind of been a libertarian. The story I tell, or at least what I remember as kind of my first libertarian moment was when they tore down the house of some neighbors across the street from us in our neighborhood growing up when I was a kid. It was this elderly African-American couple, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They didn't have any kids, but they were kind of everybody's babysitter, everybody's grandparents. And one day they had to move, and they didn't want to move, but they had to. And I didn't really understand why. And what was going on was they were building a new highway near us, and they needed to seize their house in order to help grade some of the road down to it. And so they had to move. And then after they moved, they changed their mind and they routed the highway slightly differently, so they actually didn't need to seize the property at all. And so I checked on Google Maps recently, and it's still an empty lot. Like they never ended up building anything on it. So it was all kind of for nothing. And I think it was at that young age that I was like, maybe the people who make decisions don't know what they're doing. And you know, I live in Washington, D.C. now. I've lived here for over 15 years. And I go out into the states all the time dealing on state tax policy. I've testified 36 states. I work with a lot of officials and everything. And I really haven't changed my mind on that since then. So, you know, there's everybody kind of has, you know, imposter syndrome to some degree. And that includes some of our most prominent decision makers. And it's kind of half scary, but also half, man, there's incredible opportunity for libertarians. Sorry, you may hear Magic, my dog, making some noise in the background here.
You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely can identify with that imposter syndrome. When I was running for city council in New York last year, there were a lot of people that were like, "Oh, you're going to be part of the terrible government that we all hate." And you know, it's definitely weird to kind of correlate some of your more anarchist tendencies with the possibility of actually running for office. It's like, yeah, end the federal government, but also elect me to Congress is a hard conversation.
Well, it's a one that a lot of our libertarian candidates are having a better job formulating because, well, I mean, take here in Washington, D.C., I'm chair of the D.C. Libertarian Party. And how the D.C. Council is set up is there's 13 members, and at least 2 of them have to be non-members of the majority party, which is Democrats. So, you know, Democrats elect 11, and then 2 have to be non-Democrats. And Republicans used to have those seats. Republican Party really doesn't exist in the District of Columbia anymore, so they're not really competitive for them anymore. And so for now, they've been captured by progressives. So people too left to be in the Democratic Party, and so they have those seats. They're able to win those seats with about 22 to 28% of the vote. So it's a real opportunity for us. It's kind of one of our medium-term goals in the DC Libertarian Party is to run a competitive race and try to pick up some of those seats. And we get a lot of positive comments from Democrats about that idea. And I mean, the winning message with them is, don't you want? I mean, you don't want to live in a one-party city
Right.
because you get corruption from that, you get groupthink from that, you don't get the good ideas that you get from having a diversity of opinions on stage. So, I ran for Attorney General this last round in 2018, and my husband ran for council chair, and we got 7-8% of the vote. And that's not all libertarians. That's Democrats voting for us too, because that message appeals to them of wanting somebody there to be an honest broker and to have another point of view, because nobody wants a one-party system. So, that argument can be used different ways in different places, but there's a lot of openness to it.
Yeah, I think one of the best arguments I heard towards that line was from Dan Fishman. He was running for, I think, an auditor, something like that. I'm gonna mess that up. Yeah,
you got the Boston endorsement.
Yes. So I met him while he was still in that campaign, and his platform of, wouldn't you rather have somebody that's outside of the two-party system auditing the two-party system, just seems like a no-brainer to me. There's definitely specific positions within the government that are just made for a libertarian, like district attorney. Those, it's like perfect for us.
Yeah, and it's the hard part is finding the right candidate and making sure they can fundraise and building campaign infrastructure. And we're getting a lot better at that than we used to be. Just the reality of being a third party. I mean, it used to be we had to spend 90% or more of our money and our time and our resources on ballot access, because being able to get a candidate or a party on the ballot, the laws on that are so unfair in the United States, so unfair on that on so many of our states, where Democrats and Republicans have automatic ballot access or very low thresholds, but we have to face very high ones. We're now in a place where it's not easy, but it's less of a proportionate burden than it used to be. We've picked up automatic ballot access in a lot of our states. We're really good at getting ballot access when we need to. We're getting more proactive at litigation when that's a good tool that we can use. So we're able to spend a little bit more of our time and resources on things other than ballot access, which opens up opportunities like this. And, we got libertarian candidates running all over the country, increasingly ones good candidates with strong messages in competitive districts, like those in the Frontier Project in the Mountain West. And then we just helped do a big fundraiser for Brad Barron, who's running against Mitch McConnell in the U.S. Senate in Kentucky. And he's going to be on the debate stage because he was able to raise $100,000 awesome. by June 30th. And, the Senate candidate we ran last time raised a fraction of that amount during the entire campaign. So we're making strides. We're making progress.
That's really good to hear. Yeah, I've been able to pick up a little bit of support for him over the last week since they had their primary, and the Democrats kind of shit the bed on that one.
Yeah, no, I mean the establishment. I mean, it's rigged for the establishment, and there's plenty of examples of that throughout time. I mean, the Democratic Party, it's structured as this giant coalition, but the candidates will always be from a certain stripe, and the Republican Party has some similar issues with it, but that's just kind of how it goes. I mean, that's the nature of a two-party system, I guess, in the way that they've set it up. Whereas the great thing about being in the Libertarian Party is it really is an open process in choosing our candidates, in choosing our nominees, and choosing our party officers. I'm running for chair. It's going to be decided by the 1,046 delegates, and the delegates are all chosen by state members at each of their individual conventions. if anybody wanted to rig this, it's pretty impossible to. And similarly, our candidates for president and vice president, Joe Jorgensen and Fite Cohen, they were also chosen by delegates picked from all over the country. So, there's no super delegates. There's no establishment pick. There's no keeping people out when they have enough delegate support. It really is wide open. And it kind of blows people's minds a little bit sometimes. I mean, as a member of the LNC, we get emails. People want to email the Libertarian Party, and the email ends up in my inbox. And people are like, you should pick so-and-so as your presidential candidate, or you should do this. And I'm like, it's not up to me. It really is up to the delegates.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about the Libertarian Party is how we choose our vice presidential candidate. Mm-hmm. The fact that we get to vote on that instead of it being just a decision by whoever we pick for president. Like Joe Biden's able to hold up the entire Democratic Party right now with, who's his VP pick going to be? Is it going to be somebody terrible and awful like Kamala Harris, or is it going to be somebody great and awesome that we all wanted, like Bernie Sanders? Is the name I'm hearing the most. Tulsi. But I think we do it the best way possible. It's like the next selection after president. We get to vote on that, and then we get to have unifying tickets like Jorgensen Cohen, who represent literally the entirety of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, no, and the messaging, I'm going to be very interested to see what messaging they settle in for the rest of the campaign. There's so many opportunities for us as libertarians on the criminal justice issue, on healthcare, on the size of government. There's just all of these issues going on that the Democrats and Republicans have no solutions that they're ready to offer. I'm very excited about the possibilities in front of us for this year, and it's a good time. I mean, the country needs us. It's so stressful and so terrible right now. I mean, it's like how much worse could public policy get than it is right now? I mean, we've got a pandemic on top of an economic crisis, on top of an incompetent federal, FDA and CDC response, on top of budget shortfalls in the states, on top of a trade war, on top of an immigration policy dispute. It's just kind of everything all at once. It's very exhausting.
Yeah, for sure. It would be nice to be able to vote for somebody that's not a pedophile or a sex criminal. That would be just that in of itself is nice. I think we get to grow a little bit in popularity the more competitive primaries become. That's kind of what I'm noticing, at least on Twitter, is kind of the most common way that I'm getting people to look at libertarian candidates. If I'm talking about Joe Jorgensen, it's usually to like Andrew Yang or Tulsi Gabbard or Bill Weld people. If I'm talking about the race in Kentucky, it's people that supported Booker.
Yeah.
So I think the more competitive the primaries get, the more people get disillusioned with the main pick. 30 years ago, a lot of people just kind of let the primary happen. It was like 5% of the party that actually voted, and then everybody just went in the general and did their thing. But people pay attention now, so we're able to make headway by being a logical choice.
And I think part of that is because not we libertarians, but we as Americans have built up the federal government to be so powerful and so all-encompassing that every election becomes this live or die moment where if we don't elect our people, this is Democrats and Republicans talking, then the other side's going to sweep in and get rid of everything that we have put in. And they both say this. The issues are different and the focus is different, but it really becomes this, every chip is on the table situation for them. And, nobody's voting for Joe Biden. They're voting against Donald Trump. And, there are some people voting for Donald Trump, but most of his votes are going to be people voting against Joe Biden. So that's where most Americans are. Most Americans are anti-Trump and or anti-Biden. And that creates an incredible opening for us to be able to give them something that they could consider voting for rather than just vote against.
Yeah. I think part of me got really disillusioned and like kind of 2016 killed a lot of my hope for the LP. I thought for sure Gary Johnson is going to get at least 15-20%. This is ridiculous. Trump and Clinton, they're both terrible. Like, how could anybody vote for either of those people? And then what happened, and I was like, oh, okay, Americans are stupid. But yeah, I think the Democrats picked an even more obviously worse choice this year, and we have a great opportunity. We now get to play the female candidate card, like 2016. So I think that'll actually do a lot of good.
Yeah. Now I'm a lawyer, so good lawyers, they sell hope and they sell fear, and honestly, politics is not much different. Any political strategist at its core, a candidate is selling hope or they're selling fear. It's kind of all fear now. The Democrats are selling fear of 4 more years of Trump, and the Republicans are selling fear of the Democrats taking over everything. And that's unfortunate because it creates such a negative, it creates so much negativity, and it turns a lot of people off. I mean, we're combining these competitive primaries and these increased stakes for whoever wins with lower and lower turnout and lower partisan identification as Democrats and Republicans. Independents are the largest voting bloc in the United States now, and I think these things are all connected and related.
I definitely agree. So I mentioned in the introduction that you're the VP of Tax Policy and Litigation for the National Taxpayers Union.
Yeah.
Curious if you could tell us a little bit about what that job is.
Well, it's a brand new job. I'm 3 weeks into it.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So, thank you. I was, as you mentioned in the intro, I was 15 years at a think tank where I worked in state tax policy and did a fair amount of lawyering as well. And then in between, I did a stint at a big law firm helping with clients with their tax practice issues and working on tax policy as well. So I recently, made the jump to National Taxpayers Union, NTU.org, and it's really a job. It's a brand new position for them. My role is to stand up a taxpayer defense litigation program. So it'll be a brand new thing for them and a brand new project for me. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a big opportunity. It's the goal basically is to be an entity that pushes back on the IRS and state tax authorities whenever they cross the line. And it's job security for life, really. But it's interesting because so many people that I've talked to about it already are like, man, we need you to do that, and you'll never win, but we need you to do that. And I'm very excited about doing it. I've got my history battling the IRS. Where I'm one of 3 plaintiffs in a class action suit against them over their imposition of fees on tax preparers who paid tax preparers, where we won at the trial court, and right now we're kind of in the appeals process. In the end, I think we're going to win and get about $170 million refunded to taxpayers. So they're fighting pretty hard on that, and it's kind of made me pretty fearless in taking on the IRS. I've gone through a deposition where the other side of the table is a whole bunch of IRS lawyers quizzing me for a day. They have every piece of paper I've ever sent to the federal government in a pile in front of them that they're referencing. So, somebody recently asked me, like, how do you deal with like pushback you get from people in the Libertarian Party on different things? And I'm like, I've been through that. I've been through an IRS deposition. No Libertarian, however mean they are, is worse than that. And so it's a great new opportunity for me, and honestly, it's a great new opportunity for taxpayers because the IRS has just gone nuts. And I could spend 2 hours talking about horrible examples of what the IRS has put taxpayers through, or what's going on, or what we're cooking up. But if you're interested in that, certainly reach out. Whether you've got case ideas, or if you're interested in helping support it, or you just want to know more about it.
That's awesome. I am actually currently studying to be a tax preparer, so
No kidding.
these are definitely part of the thing that makes my life annoying.
Well, since we filed our lawsuit, they've cut them. They used to be like $80 or $90. Now I think they're like 50 or something like that.
Nice.
So I'm already saving you a little bit of money there. But so what makes you want to be a tax preparer? I'm gonna become the interviewer for a second. So nobody grows up wanting to do tax. They see it at some point and fall into it.
Yeah, so that came to me because for the last about 4 years, I've worked in the merchant cash advance industry. So I'm brokering small business loans, and that industry kind of has one of two approaches. You're either very client based or very just turnover based. You're either trying to make as many calls as possible, or you're trying to do as many things per call as possible. So I started out on the as many calls as possible route with the companies that I was working. They pushed me to 300, 400 calls a day, but I eventually started my own company and moved towards the just try to do as much per call. So I started working with different kinds of funding agencies. I worked with like a real estate funding agency, and I worked with companies that would help with your credit score. I worked with companies that would like set up the credit card machines in your store. So I was doing like a lot of different things with these clients. And tax season came around last year, and everybody was bitching and moaning. Every phone call that I got was somebody like, "Oh man, I have to do my taxes. I don't have time to fill out your application. I'm doing all this shit."
Yeah.
So I was like, man, if I study next year, or at least the following year, I could do all of these people's taxes and make a bunch of money on top of everything, and they would be more inclined to take a loan from me and do all the other things. So it was just kind of like an added thing to my arsenal when it started, and I kind of got a little bit more into it, and I'm about halfway done with the course, and it's actually kind of fun. I like money, man, so it's not terrible.
It's another one of those job security things. I mean, you got a job for life once you're able to do that. Most normal people, they see the return address from the Internal Revenue Service or from a state tax authority, and it's like an envelope full of anthrax or something. They're like, make this go away as fast as possible. So you're once you're able to figure out how to work magic on all of that, you're going to be everybody's best friend.
That is the plan. I've always been the kind of client services industry. Almost everything that I've done in my adult life has been just being a good customer service person and hoping that helps me make money. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always, but sometimes it does. But all right, so you're running to be chairman of the Libertarian National Committee.
I am.
Why? What makes you want to lead the LP?
Three things. One, I really think we need to have a focus on tools and resources for candidates and affiliates. So there's so many examples of people having to reinvent the wheel that it just kind of drives me nuts. And it really should be an area we spend more of our focus on than I think we do right now. So that's a big priority of mine. And being able to connect the training that we have and the data tools and provide opportunities for people to be door knocking and phone banking. We're behind the other parties on all this stuff, and I want to see us catch up. Another big reason is just being able to set a personal example for a culture of building and teamwork and unity. I think there's a lot of people that try to divide libertarians, from each other and to pit us against each other. And that I think that does hold back our ability to work together. I can't promise to fix all that. I'm going to do what I can, just mainly by being a good example for that and not contributing to the negativity, not contributing to overcommitment. I want to honor an activist every month for something amazing they've done. I want to create support networks for elected officials, do lots of town halls, and on the committee facilitate clear goals and progress on them so that our LNC members have something that they're supposed to be focused on, not just yelling at each other all the time. And then probably the other big area is I've got a proven track record of success. I've built organizations. I've grown. At the think tank that I worked at, I helped take them from 11 to 34 staffers, from $1.5 million budget to $5.5 million budget. We launched marketing initiatives. We built new fundraising strategies and programs. I love doing that. I love finding something that has potential and can do a lot of great things, that's kind of not operating at maximum that it should be, and helping it get to that point. And so I'd love to help facilitate that progress. I think it's something we really need, because the opportunities are out there. We're just not yet taking advantage of them the way we could.
I couldn't agree more. You kind of already answered my next question, but beyond your proven track record of being able to do that and make things succeed, what else do you think that you bring to the LP as chair?
Well, I've been a party, I'm not a Johnny-come-lately. I've been a party member for 25 years. I've been a state chair for the last couple of years here in DC. I've been to a whole bunch of conventions. I've been chair of the bylaws committee, and I've been a member of the national committee for the last 2 years. So, there's a lot of people who join the Libertarian Party and are immediately eager to say, well, here's something that you should do, or here's something that you should try. And some of those are good ideas, but you really need a lot of the historical background to understand what's doable and what's not, and what's been tried before and failed, or why something might be politically harder to do versus not, and probably most importantly, where the line is between what the national committee should be doing and what state affiliates and candidates should be doing, because we're not a top-down centralized organization. So it's a lot of it's moral suasion and being able to make good cases for things, rather than just kind of sitting in the chair and decreeing stuff. So I'm kind of eager for that challenge. I've certainly done it plenty of times before. My day job is going into state legislators and getting Democrats and Republicans to do libertarian things. And we've been able to, cut taxes or avoid tax increases to the tune of about $2 billion a year over my career doing that. And, it's very challenging, but very worthwhile and very enjoyable. And I see all of the potential for what the Libertarian Party could be in, making our world set free in our lifetime and advancing libertarian public policy. So I'm eager to get started, and I'm hopeful the delegates will support me.
Oh, definitely good luck to you in that. I want to switch gears a little bit. You've talked about how the kind of having to reinvent the wheel process, which is probably my biggest concern with the LP. But what are some other things that, when you look inside the LP, you don't like what you see?
It's not so much what I don't like what I see. It's just we are so eager and we have so much potential and so much opportunity that our focus is a bit diffused. And it's kind of hard, because it's kind of hard to avoid, because we have ballot access goals, we have marketing goals, we have staffing goals, we have candidate and campaign goals, we have fundraising goals, we have marketing and membership goals, and all of those are important things. But with a finite amount of resources, and if you're not growing the pie, then it gets very you end up in this war over resources, and you don't really achieve your potential on any of those things. So something that's very important for me is making fundraising a main priority in the beginning. And not because I think fundraising is the most important of those things, but because fundraising pays for itself more than it pays for itself when you do it right. So we've got a donor list of tens of thousands. It's actually over 100,000 people. We've got lots of potential projects that we could be doing and promoting to get support. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and we really haven't leveraged it effectively. It really was only a couple of years ago that the Libertarian National Committee hired its first full-time fundraising staffer. Before that, fundraising was just something the chair or the executive director or other people did as part of their, broader portfolio. And, and as no matter how good somebody is or how focused they are, when it's just one of 11 things that somebody's doing, it's not going to get the attention that it deserves. So something we were able to do last year is make fundraising the #1 staffing priority for the National Committee. And so now we've built up a fundraising team of 3 people. And I'm very proud that I was able to help cobble together the coalition on the LNC to pass that, because now we can really focus in a way that we haven't before and build up those resources. And, they're going to pay for themselves and then some by pitching what we're doing to gift prospective donors who can make large gifts. And we'll be able to kind of reinvest those proceeds, so to speak, into other priorities that we have that the LNC decides to prioritize. And, we'll keep doing that, and we'll keep investing in success. Stuff that doesn't work out, we'll try to learn from those lessons and reallocate funds, and we'll see where it takes us. But a kind of fundraising first focus is something that we've kind of avoided from now. And kind of the opposite of a fundraising first focus is a marketing first focus. And it's easy to kind of fall into that trap. I've seen lots of organizations do it, where they're like, let's do a Super Bowl ad, or let's do a sustained campaign, or let's email everybody. And the hope being that, once people hear, they just need to hear about us. And once they hear about us, they'll open up their envelope, open up their wallets and contribute funds. And I've seen a lot of organizations bet the farm on that approach and lose everything. Because, and it's unfortunate. I wish the world was a world where all you had to do was good work and donors found you and got you the money. But you have to make pitches to people. You have to steward donors. You have to, take them along with you and make sure that they know about you and keep them informed and everything. And that takes people. And we have the people now. Now it just takes the focus and the attention.
Yeah, I am personally one of the people that have fallen into that trap of a marketing first focus. When I ran for city council, I made that mistake entirely. I barely did any fundraising. I just posted a lot on Facebook and into Facebook groups and on Twitter and Instagram and all this stuff, and posted the donation link everywhere I could possibly imagine, and then got pissed that nobody was donating to my campaign. But I didn't call a single person and ask them for a donation.
Oh, no, you gotta do that. Coca-Cola spends billions a year on marketing and advertising. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is. So, yeah, but they still feel the need to invest in it. But that shows that, just awareness is not enough in order to generate sales. You got to do a lot more than that.
So what do you think you could change the most as chair outside of the fundraising? Because you've shown that you have that expertise, you got that passed, you can make that succeed. But you also mentioned the kind of divisiveness within the party. And do you think that you can kind of manage these issues as chair, that your election will be some great revival like we were talking about earlier, or is this definitely just something that's going to need everybody to kind of come around to?
Well, it might require everybody, but it starts at the top, and I'm going to take that very seriously as chair. When I was chair of the bylaws committee, we had, and I'll rattle off some names that some of your viewers may recognize. The bylaws committee last term, we had Aaron Starr, Alicia Matson, M. Carling, Karen Ann Harlos, Chuck Moulton, Andy Craig, and then a couple of other people. Apologize for not remembering everybody who was on the committee. But if none of those names sound familiar, suffice it to say these are people with very strong opinions who don't always get along well together. And
that's a pretty loaded group right there.
Yeah, well, and I inherited it. I was the chair ended up resigning. I ended up I'd been vice chair, and so I ended up taking it over a couple of weeks before the convention, and had to pull together our recommendations and everything. So, we pulled together the recommendations. We got all of the arguments written out, and we sent it out as a survey. Got lots of feedback. I read all of the feedback from like thousands of emails, incorporated all of it. Got votes. Like we did like 40 votes in a row to incorporate that feedback and presented the recommendations. And the delegates ended up adopting 9 of them, which, I haven't been to every convention ever, but I understand that's a high number for a number of bylaws recommendations to be adopted. And the trick on that, it really wasn't much of a trick. It was being fair and holding the gavel, making sure nobody was getting railroaded. Everybody had an opportunity to say what they wanted to say. And if somebody had an idea, that they had an opportunity to offer it, and keeping things going towards decisions. So, kind of not letting it drift or get aimless, but keeping things moving, but in a way that made sure everybody had a chance to participate and provide input. And once people understand that those are the rules of the game, that, it's not going to be some scripted thing where unless you're currying favor or you have the right viewpoint, you're going to get shut out or you're not going to be able to participate. Once people know it's a fair process, a lot of that animosity kind of melts away. Doesn't all melt away, but a lot of it does. And we were able to row in the same direction and get the job done. So, I mean, that's going to be what I try to do as chair. And we'll see how far it takes us. But I don't get to choose the rest of the committee. I'm just one of 17 members on it. The delegates and the regional, the people out in the regions, they pick the rest of the committee, and I'm eager to work with them. At least the ones that have been selected so far, and kind of all the candidates running. Really, I mean, I have some past experience, good working relationships with, and that's an important thing too, because you want to be able to have some background of past relationships with people that you can draw on when things get tough. So if you've got to deliver bad news to somebody, or you have to vote against what somebody wants to do, people have to have the confidence and the trust that you're doing it for some reason other than some political vindictiveness or something like that. Because then people can, they may not be happy about it, but at least they can kind of accept it. And I want to be able to steward and foster and facilitate that environment, because that's really the only way we're going to get stuff done. It's not like the LNC is going to be, one faction or one group is going to sweep all 17 seats. That's not going to happen. We're structured in a way to make sure that doesn't happen. So we need leaders that understand that and are willing to help bridge those gaps however they can.
Do you think that the caucus kind of framing of the party is helpful as kind of a way to understand the different factions of the party, or do you think that they cause divisiveness?
So I'm let me be full disclosure here. I'm a member of the Pragmatist Caucus. I've been their policy director, which is the easiest job in the world because our policy is the Libertarian Party platform. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's just the platform as adopted by the delegates. Sorry, the dog's shaking here. Full disclosure on that. The value for me, just speaking as an individual on the caucus, is whenever I've encountered some frustration or some anxiety or some why am I still doing this? I have better things to do with my time and my attention. This is unpaid. Your listeners should know that LNC members do not get paid. LNC chair does not get paid. If anything, we pay the party because we are all contributors. We all donate a lot to the party. We all pay to attend meetings and so forth, to fly there and all that. But it's in those moments, it's good to kind of have people who remind me we're all working towards a common goal of trying to elect people. And and get policy changed in a libertarian direction. So that's the value for me. I'm sure you'll get different answers from different people in other things, but I really do think it's just kind of a collective support group is probably the main value. Now, where it gets into like, trying to turn caucus members into foot soldiers to make them do certain things, I think that probably turns. I mean, libertarians are just not natural foot soldiers generally, so I really don't think those types of efforts work in the long term, anyways. And we've seen caucuses come and go over the years and grow and then fail and all of that, and I expect that cycle won't change anytime soon. In a way, it's kind of like the emergence of political parties under the Washington administration, under George Washington's administration, who, our Constitution did not envision political parties, and George Washington really didn't like the emergence of political parties, but yet they happened. The first ones being, the people that were pro-George Washington and the people that were anti-George Washington in terms of the policies of the administration. And that's from that sprang our political parties. And I don't know. I mean, I've studied a lot of political science, and there's a lot of theories about why political parties emerge and why groupings emerge and caucuses emerge. Something I would like to see more inside the party is cross-caucus groupings that can serve that mutual support need without necessarily the internal politics implications of them. So I'm a lawyer. I'd love to be part of a grouping of other libertarian lawyers where we get together every now and then and trade stories and opportunities and see what's going on. And, we can do the same thing with libertarian doctors or libertarian real estate agents or whatever have you. And I think there's a lot of other opportunities to kind of group people together on different things.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. I think my grouping would be pretty small. I think that's one of the LP is we don't have very many salesmen. I talked about this with Tony DeRazio because he is a good salesman. Yeah, and I am the only person in the New York City party that has a front-facing people job.
So you're a libertarian extrovert.
Yeah. Hard to find.
We need more of you. So if you can tell us how to get more of you, that'd be very valuable.
I'm trying really hard. Most of them go to a different party. Yeah. I've noticed a lot of the people that share my personality traits are DSA members. Because they do more of the rioting and the activism, the marching in the streets. And that's something that's really attractive to me and why I've done so much work with the DSA. Because, we have a lot of the same policies, and I've whipped votes from the DSA to our city candidates before, which is one of the most fun things to do, in my opinion, is to make a socialist vote libertarian. It's like the greatest game of chess.
We need more of that activism and more of that lobbying opportunities led by libertarians. I went to UC Berkeley, and which was a fun, interesting experience. I would never change the world for it. It taught me so much. But we had all these protests and everything. We were able to organize a lot of stuff as libertarians, and it kind of really jumped at me when I was there during the invasion of Afghanistan and then during the invasion of Iraq afterwards. So I was in college during that time, and the anti-war protests were all led by the Workers' World Party and their Answer Coalition, which whatever's to the left of the DSA, like way to the left of the DSA, that's who the Workers' World Party. I think they're a militant offshoot that broke away because they supported the Soviet suppression of the Hungarian revolt or something. So they're left, but they don't wear it on their sleeve. I mean, you'll never hear about how the Soviets were right to shoot people in Budapest from them, because they're focused on when something happens, when there's a war threat, when the people in the Pentagon or the White House are making noises, they spring up in 100 cities with the signs and the mailing lists, and everybody's out there, and it's not just their members, they invite everybody there. So not long ago we had that Iran war scare, and they threw together something very quickly in Lafayette Park in front of the White House, and we had a very strong DC libertarian presence. But man, we should be organizing this stuff. We're more anti-war than they are. They want class war, but we we're opposed to all aggressive wars, and there's no reason that if we had kind of the signs ready to go and the messaging ready to go and the people ready to go, that we couldn't be leading those efforts. And I don't mean just to talk about war. So too on criminal justice issues. So too on a lot of the issues that are front and center right now.
Yeah, I could not agree more. That was one of the main focuses that I had when I was in New York City. An active member. I was the events coordinator for the Manhattan Party for a little while, and I tried to get some of that stuff done. I organized debate watch parties for the Democratic presidential debate. That was probably the most successful thing that I could claim. We had like 55 people at the first one, and only 15 of them were like active members of the LP.
Yeah.
So I had the help of our social media coordinator, who's now our vice chair, Rebecca Lau. She plastered that thing all over social media, and we got an awesome response. But I also did things like the No New Jails protest, because I don't know how much you follow New York City politics, but last year we passed a bill that would spend $11 billion to build 4 new jails in New York City, and then maybe possibly in 20 years they'll close right. And it would be closed right
now. Then the pressure's on to fill it. So
exactly, that was one of the things we were chanting. If they build it, they will fill it. And I had one other libertarian show up to that for about an hour, and he's not exactly the greatest messenger of the New York City Libertarian Party as it is. So I was basically there by myself. I was there when it started. I was there till the end. It was great. But yeah, nobody else showed up and I think that's one of the biggest problems we have is you love to go on Facebook and Twitter and try to get votes that way, but nobody wants to show up for a march in the streets.
Yeah, no, I mean it's got to change, and I mean the only way to change it is setting good example, and it's all about carrots, not sticks, and it's a big reason why I want to run and want to be chair, because we can provide those opportunities. And something that's pretty awesome about being an at-large member of the National Committee, and will continue to be true as being chair, is I spend the year going all over the country meeting local libertarians. So in the last 2 years, I've visited delegates in 30 different states at their state conventions, and then in addition to that, I've met with either libertarian leaders or libertarian activists in many more states. And so I'm hearing all the time great ideas that have worked, like the one you just shared, great examples of things states have done. There's really no clearinghouse for all of this stuff. I mean, people share it on Facebook, but of course, everything's on Facebook. It gets very noisy. I'd love for there to be, I kind of term it affiliate in a box, but these just kind of a laundry list of awesome ideas and best practices and checklists of how to do things, and just kind of everything, so that you don't have to kind of start from scratch. So if, for instance, you want to do an event in April, there's a resource somewhere to remind you April is tax day. So if you want to do an event around people filing their taxes when it's foremost on their minds, it's a great month to do it. And April is also the anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, when Americans stood up to the British. And so if you want to do something to highlight that. Or April is also the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, when a desperate people who'd had all their guns taken away and were literally going to be marched to their deaths, decided in a moment of desperation and against no odds, because they were not going to prevail, but to stand and fight, and being able to either do display boards or activism days or movie nights, as you mentioned, all this kind of stuff, to be able to get our focus not from just talking to other libertarians, but outward. And, you know, I'm not a leftist. I kind of grew up, from a family, a liberal family. But, going to Berkeley, I was surrounded by a lot of them. And, man, they know how to do their activism and throw stuff together. And, maybe there's things to learn there. We got to do more than just kind of handing pamphlets to each other. We have to get out there and talk to people. And a lot of that, I think, is just providing those opportunities. There's no reason why we can't have, for any state that wants to participate or any local libertarian that wants to participate, national days of action or activism or lobbying on certain issues. And we can get tons of media attention for that. I mean, I live in DC. People fly in all the time for coordinated days of lobbying on certain issues. It was actually the first time I came to Washington was when the ACLU organized students from all over the country to come to Washington, D.C. for a day to lobby on surveillance issues against surveillance. This was back in the Iraq era. Now, that takes a lot of organizing and takes a lot of coordination and communication and all of that. But we're getting to the point where we can be ready for that kind of stuff. And we can get a lot of attention of not just being the people that fight on Facebook, but the people that actually change public policy in a libertarian direction.
That would be incredible. That's one of the things that I pride the Green Party on, especially here in New York State. Howie Hawkins has done more for public policy than any libertarian I know. It's just unfortunately true. But I think we're finally getting there. The mass majority is starting to adopt a lot of libertarian policies, and I don't know how much of that we can necessarily take credit for, but legalizing marijuana and decriminalizing prostitution.
Well, at minimum,
reform, anti-war.
At minimum, it buys us street cred, because we've been right on criminal justice from the beginning of our party. We've been right on the drug war from the beginning of our party. We've been right on gay rights from the beginning of our party. And some right winger posted on Twitter recently and tagged me in it, so I got drawn into it, about how the gays are now the establishment, and so they don't need any more whatever. This was the day that Supreme Court decision came down last week that struck down workplace discrimination against gays, and whatever your view on that Supreme Court decision, it was not that long ago that my husband and I could not get legally married. And it was not long, it was within my lifetime that it was a criminal offense for gays to have sexual relations with each other. And it was, it's within, certainly within recorded history when gays could not be employed by the federal government. And, if you were found out, then you were stripped of all of your pension and job and everything. So it's God, why did I even go on this tirade? Sorry, you brought up something that reminded me of that, but it's I don't know.
You brought up that quick topic, and I do want to touch on it real quick because I'm curious your opinion as a homosexual libertarian. How do you feel about that?
About
the Supreme Court case? Sorry.
Well, Justice Gorsuch, he's not a libertarian, but he's probably as close as we're going to get from a Republican administration. So his reasoning, and I have had the opportunity to read the decision. It's it's dry as all Supreme Court opinions are, but it's fairly interesting reading. His argument is, so they passed the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Civil Rights Act says you can't discriminate in public accommodations or in employment for a couple of different reasons, and one of them is sex. And so if you fire someone for being gay, what you're doing is you're firing somebody for having for example, a man who has the mannerisms of a woman. Whereas if it was a woman who had the mannerisms of a woman, you wouldn't fire her. So he said, this is really sex discrimination. What you're doing is you're firing somebody because they're a man who's not acting like a man in your review, or a woman who's not acting like a woman. And that falls under the definition of sex. And it's a very interesting argument because normally what many Supreme Court justices will do is they'll say, well, let's look at the legislative history. Let's see what the congressman who inserted that provision thought it meant so that we could understand kind of how we're supposed to interpret it. And that particular provision, the being against sex discrimination, it's kind of an open secret that it was inserted as a poison pill by Southern segregationists who were trying to kill the bill. The bill as a whole was mainly directed at racial discrimination in 1964. So they added that provision thinking it would lose the votes of everybody else in the bill. It didn't end up passing with it. So all we really have in legislative history is some segregationists added this language. So, you know, if we're going to go by legislative history, we have to kind of put our minds in what Judge Smith, that was his name, the segregationist House member, what he thought of gay people. And, you know, we just don't know. So instead, Gorsuch was like, I'm going to be a textualist about this, and let's just look at the word and see what it means and how it applies. And so that's how he ended up coming down its ruling. And it was 6-3. So, you know, there's a lot of 5-4 decisions in the Supreme Court nowadays, but this one was 6-3. Got all the liberals and the Chief Justice on it. So, and the President Trump, who I don't give a lot of credit for on a lot of things, to his credit on this one, his response very quickly was, it's the Supreme Court's decision and it's what it is. So, you know, I think we're ready to move on as a country on this one. And as far as the libertarian argument, you know, I hear libertarians with two arguments on this. On one side is, you know, as long as we're going to have discrimination laws that apply to people operating in the public space and opening their doors, you know, at least theoretically to all who enter, that should apply to everybody, including gay people. So kind of that's one argument. And then the other argument is let's kind of leave it to each individual business and each individual company to decide who they want to serve. And you know, honestly, the American people are of the same two minds on it. And it you know, maybe it's degrees of severity. Whether you know, if a school fires a teacher for being gay because they don't want gay people teaching kids, people might view that differently from, you know, like a nightclub picking and choosing who they're letting in based on entirely subjective criteria, you know, like a crowded nightclub with a big line, deciding who they want in on entirely subjective criteria. I think, you know, it's perfectly fair for Americans to view those situations as different ones, even though lawyers like me will be like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I'm personally a little bit more of the second mind. I think that we should kind of scrap most anti-discrimination laws, because I think it should be up to the individual business. And I think that how I feel is that for the most part, the country as a whole is of a mind that discrimination is wrong. And so, you know, the baker that wouldn't bake the cake kind of an argument, you know, if we had no laws, they could just say, nope, I'm not going to bake your cake. And the person went and posted on Facebook like, oh, these people are homophobic, they would lose a lot of business.
Yeah.
And that would be a better, I think that would teach the lesson not to be discriminatory significantly better than the government stepping in. Because it's very easy to say, oh, the government shouldn't even be a part of this, and just dismiss the whole thing entirely. Where if we let the free market decide who we want to give our money to based on how shitty of people they are, then they end up having to be better people because their clients want them to be, and they understand that that's how society operates, and that they should become better people rather than just, oh, because Big Brother told me to. That's, I think, a lot worse of a teaching moment.
I mean, green, being able to bring in the green, can sometimes convince even the strongest racist, if they're, you know, if their livelihood depends on it. You know,
like the owner of the Clippers, he was a huge racist, and he owned a basketball team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, so this, you know, we just finished June, which is Pride Month, and Pride Month is the month that it is, I believe, because of the Stonewall uprising in New York in the 60s, which was this mob-owned, dive bar that watered down drinks and turned people into the police and shook people down and all of that. But gays went there because it was the only place, literally the only place in New York City that they could be themselves in at the time. And, the mob opened that place, not because they were gay mobsters or because they were pro-gay. It was because the laws that had ostracized gays and had driven them out of polite society and respectable society and all of that, created an opportunity for the mob to be able to, a willing clientele willing to walk in and be shook down and turned into police and serve expensive watered down drinks. And, that, so it's
Luckily,
not,
it's a better bar than that now.
oh yeah. And of course, gay bars are the best bars available now. But
I'm 100% straight, and I completely agree with that statement. There's a bar literally directly across the street from Stonewall that I go to quite frequently when I'm in New York.
Oh, nice.
It's a good time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I talk to a lot of Republicans, just through my job or from other things, and for a lot of them, I'm the only gay person they know, or at least the only gay person they think they know. And it's, I try to work in these little tidbits of history because people really don't, this was half a century ago, and so it's kind of hard. I wasn't alive then, so I'm not even speaking from personal experience, but it's kind of hard to understand what the situation was back then and why it mattered. But I guess I'm bringing it up as an example of sometimes the private sector, at least in this case, mobsters who liked money, can overcome government pushes to discriminate against certain people.
Yeah, I think one of the craziest things about this is that you say half a century ago. It was 51 years ago, and in some ways it seems like that's such a short time, and that you just kind of imagine that segregation to be so much further back. I have the same kind of thought process with the civil rights movement. That was less than 100 years ago, that people were not able to go into any restaurant in specific neighborhoods because of the color of their skin, and
that famous painting.
It seems like so long ago.
That famous painting of the little girl being escorted into the school to integrate the school, surrounded by 4 federal marshals with a huge crowd around her, throwing things at her, holding up a doll in a coffin, a doll of a little girl in a coffin, screaming at her and everything. She's 65 years old now. She's still alive. This is not as long ago as people like to think it is. But at the same time, it also is a testament to how much we've advanced in that time, because what the people who were throwing things at a little girl trying to go to school and screaming at her and everything, they were really, their views were not much different from the views of their parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents. It's been the generations since then who have realized this is nuts, this is stupid. So
their kids elected Barack Obama.
Yeah, very true.
We improved a lot as a society in literally one generation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we divulged in a lot of other ways than just that.
And it's ebbs and flows. It's not a uniform march towards enlightenment.
Right.
It's kind of this. I've been in Washington D.C. through a lot of political cycles, and I remember going to a meeting in 2004 after the Republicans reelected the president and reelected both houses of Congress. And, I was some junior fly on the wall there, as a bunch of people at the table were talking about how this was a permanent majority and how they're going to run everything. And then, 2 years later, they lost both houses of Congress, and 4 years later lost the presidency. And then the Democrats, it was their turn to come in and say, well, this is a permanent majority. We're going to be in control forever. And they overreached. And then 2 years, you had the Republican takeovers of the House and Senate again. And, it's just this constant back and forth, which is, it motivates me because it shows that Americans they're not 100% Republican. They're not 100% Democrat. They really don't like overreaching. They really don't like being lied to. They really don't like corruption. That's what loses these kind of so-called permanent majorities. And there's a big opportunity for a party that's principled, that wants to offer solutions, that wants to be honest and wants to devolve decision-making out of Washington, out of state capitals, and give this stuff back to individuals and families and people to decide.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You mentioned that ebb and flow, and for the most part, they all seem to line up with some sort of scandal or controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Monica Lewinsky scandal had a huge effect on the congressional seating. And then, we had the war in Iraq. We found out that Afghanistan was completely made up. They didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And then they went back Democrat. Then Obama kept doing the same stuff. So we went back Republican. And now Trump is doing the same stuff. And I think he'll win this time, but I think 24 will definitely not be a Republican.
Well, I'll take the other side of that bet. I don't think Trump's winning re-election, but we'll see. But never count the Democrats out to lose an election that is winnable for them.
I think that the biggest decider of this election is going to be Biden's vice president.
I think a lot of people are waiting to see who it is, and
because if he picks somebody like Kamala Harris, he loses every single Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard voter in the Democratic Party. They won't show up on election day, or they will vote for Howie Hawkins.
And I don't have any control over who Joe Biden picks as his running mate, and I'm of two minds on it. I'm like, man, I would feel for the country if he picked, a cop in chief to be vice president, and they win. On the other hand, how we could get so many people to support the Jorgensen-Cohen ticket if the options are Biden, Harris, and Trump-Pence. It's kind of amazing how the Democrats had like 20 candidates, and then the Republicans in 2016 had like 20 candidates. And, it's not just me as a libertarian partisan say this. I've heard Democrats say this about their people and Republicans say this about their people. It's almost as if our system is designed to produce the worst presidential pick through the primary system. So I'm very glad we have our delegate system in the Libertarian Party. So we actually try to get the best candidates out of our system, not the worst ones.
I'll admit I did not support Jorgensen until quite late in her campaign, and I never supported Spike. I didn't support anybody in the VP race. I actually didn't endorse anybody in the presidential race either because I wasn't a delegate and I was going to just keep my mouth shut.
And that's fine. And the great thing about the Libertarian Party is, out of all the candidates, maybe not all of them, but 90% of them, I would have no problem, of the ones who are running, I would have no problem supporting them in the general.
I think I had 3 that I wouldn't support.
Okay. So you're more selective, but I guess, I'm running for chair.
Well, I probably would have supported any of them in the general because New York State desperately needs as many votes as we can possibly get. We have 130,000 vote threshold to keep our ballot access. So I will probably vote like I'm told, but
and everyone in New York listening should vote Jorgensen-Cohen to help keep ballot access in New York.
100%. I don't care what you think about either of those 2 people. You have to like one of them.
Well, and it's all the more important because Andrew Cuomo has changed the game on you guys. Used to be you could keep your ballot access with X votes, and then he raised it. We're kind of collateral.
And we weren't supposed to have. It wasn't supposed to be up for question this year. We had hundreds of 2021 candidates already ready to go who are now sitting on the edge of their seat, myself included, waiting to see whether or not we're going to have to spend, like you said earlier, 90% of our resources on ballot access, or are we going to be able to run a legitimate campaign? Because I think a lot of people aren't going to run. If Jorgensen doesn't get 130,000, we are going to have a quarter of the candidates that we would have if we had automatic ballot access.
And that's unfortunate. And if it sets us back a couple of years, that really sucks. Hopefully we'll do it, and if not, we just got to work harder. And that's kind of the unfortunate thing about libertarian politics is we have all these obstacles that the Democrats and Republicans don't have because they put them in front of us. But I
don't think that if we lose
cold comfort when you're gathering the signatures, but in a way it makes us stronger and more resilient, because whatever they throw at us, we've dealt with ballot access, so we can kind of handle just about anything.
I do think that if we lose ballot access in 2020, which I don't think we will, I have full confidence in Jorgensen to pull that out. Larry Sharp got about 101,000 in 2018. We have significantly grown in the last 2 years, mostly thanks to his continued efforts in the Libertarian Party. So even if by some terrible disaster we do lose it in 2020, I don't see a world where we don't get it back in 22 with Larry running again for governor.
Well, God bless Larry Sharp.
Yeah, amen.
And Larry Sharp's family for putting up with all that.
True that. I think that this is one of the great ways to build a coalition, though, in New York State. We were talking about activism with other groups of people and outreach. This does just as much damage to the Progressive Party, the Reform Party, the Working Families Party, and the Green Party, and the SAM Party as it does to the Libertarian Party. So we should be building a coalition with them. And we are working with the Green Party a little bit. Working Families are kind of doing their own lawsuit. Which annoys the crap out of me, and I've called out a lot of Working Families members. One of my best friends on Twitter is an assemblywoman from Chinatown. She's a Democrat. She gets elected because she's a Democrat, but she wears the Working Families pin. She runs on their line all the time. So she's one of their kind of star people in the city, and so she was one of the main people that opposed this because she cared about the fact that even though she still won re-election in a landslide, because the Working Families Party isn't necessary. She won the Democratic primary. She's going to win re-election in November. But she still spoke out against this, and that shows character. That's something
good for her.
Basically, nobody else has.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's not only is it the right thing to do, and I've worked in policy and politics long enough to know that that it's the right thing to do, and $1 will get you a cup of coffee. But beyond it being the right thing to do, it's also short-sighted to pass laws like this because of that ebb and flow of politics. Sure, you're on top now, Democratic Party of New York, but I never say never on politics. I never know where things will go, and as Exhibit A, essentially every pundit that made a prediction about the 2016 presidential election was absolutely completely wrong. So too on a lot of, on the prediction of the 2010 congressional races, on the prediction of a lot of state races, on whether
everybody's been wrong this year.
Eric Cantor was going to win his congressional seat, or whether this is going to happen or that's going to happen. A lot of pundits are all fighting the last war. And they're all, drawing on their conventional wisdom of what happened last time and then trying to project it forward, which, I guess is good enough for punditry work. If you were to do that in the investing world, you'd quickly lose everything. It's just not a good strategy. So,
which is why most banks are losing everything, because they are also like that.
You just never know what will happen in politics. I never say never. I'm not an old person. I'm only 39, but I've seen so much in politics in my lifetime so far. I honestly think anything can happen.
Yeah, for sure. The Democrats were smart in the fact that they didn't make the threshold high enough to where they would fall short of it anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's not going to knock the Republicans off the ballot. It's not going to knock the Conservative Party off the ballot, which was a big deal. They made it just the right number to fall right in between working families and conservatives.
Yeah.
The independents and the conservatives are still good. So there's still five. If the exact same vote totals happen in 2020 as in 2018, there will still be 5 active major parties in the United States. So they made it to where, because if they made it just a little bit higher and tried to knock the Conservative Party off, they would have had a legal battle that they wouldn't have won. Nobody gives a shit about the rest of the party. We don't have a legal team to fight them. Neither does the Green Party.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. We have a little bit.
It's unfortunate it all happened, at a time when it was tough getting public attention on it. Because,
because it was put into the emergency corona relief budget.
I mean, it's one of those things where if you asked people, like, do you support this? Do you think this is right? Nobody would say yes to that. Yeah. But because they're able to kind of rush it through and bury it, they're able to get it done. I spent a lot of time talking to libertarians. I also spent a lot of time talking to non-libertarians, and we libertarians live and breathe these ballot access challenges so often. It's just kind of a second language to us. Non-libertarians are totally unaware of all of this, and I think it's something incumbent on us as libertarians, as we're being an evangelist on all of these other very important issues. We should try to take the time to explain the ballot challenges that we face, the obstacles put in our way, because I truly think 80% of Americans would agree with us on it if they just only knew.
Definitely agreed. So you've talked about quite a lot of things that you've done in your history, between the tax work and fundraising and many, many other things. What is your favorite project or topic to work
on? My favorite what? Sorry?
Your favorite topic or project that you've worked on?
Favorite is laying on the beach. I grew up in San Diego, and there's nothing more fun for me than just relaxing on the beach with a book. I got a few books, and just sitting by the ocean and listening to it. And once we have repealed every bad tax law at the federal and state levels, and have elected all the libertarians that we can elect, and have changed libertarian public policy in a libertarian direction, I'm going to go back to San Diego and lay on the beach for the rest of my life. And so that's what I'm working towards, and I'm very impatient to get that done. So that's why I'm eager to get us moving on all this stuff. Let's see. Favorite project that I've ever worked on. There's a selfish one where we managed to cut taxes here in DC, which I like because it means I pay less in taxes, and we've got better business activity in DC because we cut business taxes too. That was fun because, let me just tell the story very quickly. So there was how did this happen? How did we cut taxes in the District of Columbia with 11 Democrats and 2 progressives on the council? There was a blue ribbon commission put together because our DC tax system was terrible, certainly worse than Northern Virginia, and arguably worse than Maryland, which it's hard to be worse than Maryland's tax policy. Maryland's tax policy has turned Baltimore into what Baltimore is because of the high property taxes and the high business taxes and a whole bunch of other terrible decisions that they've made over the last 60 years. But there was a blue ribbon commission put together to say, all right, what can DC do with its tax system to be more competitive with Northern Virginia and Maryland? And they pulled together some great people, including one libertarian, which was excellent, Professor Brunori at George Washington University. He got put on the commission along with a whole bunch of other people from the business community and social service organizations and academics and a whole bunch of people. And so they put together this report with a whole bunch of different recommendations on what DC could do to improve its tax system. And like all reports like that, it was put on a shelf and forgotten and ignored. Fast forward a couple of months, and it's budget season in DC, where they're getting ready to pass the budget. And I don't know exactly how it went down, but from what I've heard, I've kind of reconstructed it, and I think it went something like this. So we've got a mayor in DC, that's essentially our governor, our executive, and then we've got the chair of the council, which is essentially our speaker of the house. And they hate each other. They hated each other then, they hate each other now. It's just kind of a dynamic. And the mayor presented his budget, and it included none of the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission recommendations because, it was ignored. And so it went to the council chair for him to start marking it up and everything. And how I think it went was he turned to his staffer and said, I hate the mayor so much, I'm not doing anything that he wants to do in his budget proposal. In fact, I want to do the opposite of everything he wants to do in his budget proposal. And the staffer reminded him that there was this Tax Reform Commission report that the mayor had completely ignored and not incorporated any of the recommendations from. And the chair of the council, I imagine him kind of leaning back and thinking for a second and then saying, we're going to implement all of those recommendations. And so that's kind of what happened. And, it wasn't smooth sailing. There were a lot of interest groups fighting over some of them. I helped organize a coalition that had never been seen before and probably never will be seen again between Americans for Prosperity, the Cato Institute, the Citizens for Tax Justice, Vox.com writers, the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, which is the left-wing group, National Taxpayers Union, where I work now, and just kind of a lot of people all over the political spectrum, all supportive of this package of recommendations that ended up getting passed through the council. So that's how we cut our income tax and our business tax and for a while our sales tax here in the District of Columbia. And it was this package that simultaneously made things more competitive as well as fairer for the people that were really concerned about fairness in the code and making sure people were paying equivalent amounts of their income to the DC government. And so, like I said, I really like that because I pay less in taxes, and it made me a lot of friends that among people who I politically don't get along with on a lot of other things. And I've been able to draw on that in subsequent fights because we've been through battle together in battling interest groups to get this tax package through. And it's that reservoir of goodwill that can be drawn on in future fights where you may cross swords on, or you want to try to get some trust or build on trust to be able to get something else done.
Yeah, those kinds of coalitions, we've talked about it throughout the show today. Those are, I think, the only way that we win as a parent.
They're so hard to do, but so rewarding when you're able to get it done.
I'm a part of an organization called Better Angels, which was kind of formed, Braver Angels now, they changed the name, which I don't like. And their entire thing, the Better Angels, was motif to Lincoln's farewell address, and just talking about the anti-partisanship. Their entire purpose is to not necessarily build a coalition of right and left, but just to kind of help the right and left understand it. So it's not a bunch of centrists and libertarians that want to kind of try to find mutually beneficial solutions. It's like straight up Clinton campaign staffers and like Trump voters, and just like polar opposites.
Yeah.
And I love going to those meetings because it's basically just a structured discussion. I used to be the red chair. I'm not a Republican, but they make you pick red or blue, so I picked red because it's New York City and there's a lot of blues.
Probably had fewer people on that side of the room. So.
Yeah. I was very surprised at how many there were, though, because like I wasn't sure that there were that many Republicans in the whole city.
The old saying of the wealthy Democratic donor in 1972 when Nixon won re-election, and on election night, her just exclaiming to her friends at whatever cocktail party they were at, was like, "How on earth could Nixon have won re-election? I don't know anybody that voted for him." And that was the year that Nixon won like 49 states or whatever. And people withdraw into their bubbles, and it's an unfortunate side effect of kind of the world we live in today, where people have done that. I mean, we used to have a lot more community organizations and private sector things and lodges and professional associations where people could mix with each other. And we don't really have that now. And there's a real opportunity for libertarians to be good ambassadors and help facilitate some of that, because we understand the left in a way the right never will. We understand the right in a way the left never will. And we can kind of talk the language for both of them. We can kind of interpret and cross things. And, I'd love for libertarians to play that role on county boards, on school boards, on in Congress, in Senate. And, Justin Amash, our libertarian member of Congress, he is already playing that role. We've got the first viable qualified immunity bill in American history, and it's the first tripartisan bill in American history, because he was able to pull together the coalition on it. Now, it's a long road.
I love that word. That is my favorite word in political existence right now.
We need more tripartisan legislatures in the United States.
I could not agree more. I think that I have always kind of missed the idea of those kind of clubs and organizations that you mentioned. I'm only 23, so they never really existed in my adult life. They died a little over a decade ago, in all reality.
Or longer.
Sure. I was a part of so many, because we still have a lot of that for the youth, right? So I was in like 3 different youth groups. I was a Boy Scout. I worked at summer camps, and I tried to do everything that I could. And then I became an adult, and like the only way that you interact with people is you're either friends, which requires some sort of way to meet. Yeah. The only way to meet people is work or politics or
religion,
exercising. I don't know, or religion. Yeah, that's where the majority of my friends come from, is either politics or religion. And like I've always wanted to be a part of like a fraternity, kind of like we used to have in the 50s and the 40s.
Yeah,
I think a creation of that would be very beneficial to America.
And I'm a good libertarian, so I can't resist the opportunity to blame government for something. I think the growth and enormity of the welfare state has helped kill off a lot of that. I always remember somebody describing once, I was watching the Flintstones recently, and they do something totally unfamiliar to us in the Flintstones. Barney and Fred, they put on these horned hats and get dressed up to go to the lodge, which is, the group of people, of everybody in the community, and they go and have a good time and hang out with each other. And these mutual aid organizations, of which there are still vestiges today, most of which only kind of a shadow of what they used to be. This used to be where the community gathered for a lot of things. It used to be where widows and orphans were taken care of. It used to be where scholarships were collected and awarded. It used to be the center of community life in a lot of ways. And government has in many ways displaced a lot of those functions to the degree where I guess we just don't think they're important anymore. And that's, I think, a big reason why we find ourselves in a society where a lot of people don't even know who their next door neighbors are, or a lot of people can't really relate to half the country because no one around them is has the views of half the country. And with all of the resultant effects on our politics and policy making and and just the tone of the national debate on key issues. And so I think we've lost a lot on that. I think libertarian policies can help get some of that back, because those types of mutual aid societies are what need to step up and fill in the gap as we roll back, one size fits all centralized decision making in the capital city. And it's a big priority of my husband's. He's all into that stuff. He's I don't know if I can say that he's a member of the Masons. Maybe they'll kill me now that I said that. And he's training to be a deacon in the Episcopal Church. So, and he works with a lot of the local charities that we have here in Washington, D.C. That provide a lot of the actual services that help get people out of homelessness and help get people out of poverty, and training and all of that. And that's really where good decision making happens. That's where actual help happens, and we should be standing up those organizations and getting involved in them. And so he'll never tire saying libertarians need to practice what they preach. And if we want to get the government out of the way on all this stuff, then we need to step up and be active in these organizations and help make them work. And so I'm certainly all in on that. And I think all libertarians should be all in on it. So good on you going, even if they make you sit in a red chair.
Yeah. I've learned so much from being a part of that organization. And I think that I've been able to kind of treat libertarianism in a way that I would never have been able to do if it wasn't for that organization. Because, like I said, it's not centrist. Most of the people that I talk to, and I flip to libertarians, are centrist already. They're already fed up with the two-party system. But, I've been able to convince Trump and Hillary supporters that maybe we should vote not a party. And not just like reluctant party slave type voters, but like wear a pin that says Trump 2020 to the meeting. Like that. I think one of the things you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier in your platform for chair, and it's something that Valerie Sarwark mentioned last week when she was on the show. That I think we need a lot more organizations within the party that aren't actually within the party. We need clubs and groups and ways for libertarians to interact with each other and kind of build a bond that isn't a business meeting for the county chapter, because those are boring, and they should be boring because they're business meetings. And if they're not boring, that means you're not doing business. I have that argument all the time in New York City that they want to make it more fun, and then we're not doing what we need to be doing as a committee.
Right.
But we need other meetings. The committee should be doing its thing, and then the party should be able to meet in other.
Yeah. Effects. I mean, this is reaching back into the deep, dark past, but when I was president of the Cal Libertarians at Berkeley, we did our business, with it. That sounds like I'm taking the dog out. We did our business meetings, with our small number of officers, and those were quick to the point with, agendas and everything, whatever we need to get done. But primarily what we spent our time doing was twice a month or once a month. What is the thing we're going to do to reach out to non-libertarians? And we did movie nights. We brought in speakers. And there's plenty of libertarians who like talking to audiences. So there's no trouble finding people who can do that, and whatever the issue. We hosted debates. We had display, we did displays on the student common where everybody passed by. We handed, we sold buttons. Man, buttons it was so easy to sell buttons back then. I don't know whether that's still true on college campuses, but that's where we put 90% of our. That's where we put 90% of our energy. And, like all libertarian organizations, we had our moderates and our anarchists and our different stripes and everything, but everybody found a role for something for them to do. The people that like organizing things and, we put them in charge of dealing with the administration on getting the rooms and getting the budget stuff sorted out and making sure we were dotting all the I's with the facilities and all of that. And then the people that liked, marketing and, we came up with the posters. Like, your job is to fill the room by coming up with a poster that gets people to want to be there. And so people that liked kind of pitching in on things, but we're kind of too busy to do more than that. meet us at 8 a.m. where for an hour, we'll hang up the flyers all over the place. And then, the people that were kind of plugged into the world would make suggestions on what speakers to bring. And so we had a lot. I mean, we had anarchist speakers, we had moderate speakers, we had kind of everything across the board there. And it was a lot of fun. And, we didn't spend
Was Chairman Supreme an entity back then?
If he was, he wasn't on our radar, unfortunately. We had a lot of people from antiwar.com. That was big back then because, of course, we were dealing with the Iraq situation at the time. We brought in people from Cato and Institute for Humane Studies. I think we even had an objectivist. That was a little controversial. It was fun. We filled the room all the time. And, that obviously wasn't just libertarians. That was us reaching other people on campus and exposing them to libertarian ideas. And we didn't really spend a lot of time on internal fighting bullshit because we were too busy doing stuff. And, I'd like to see if we can, I'd like to relive that on a larger scale. And
me too. That sounds great.
Mm.
All right, so I just want to touch on one thing that's it's been on the news quite a bit for the last couple of weeks, all around the country. We're seeing statues getting taken down either by protesters or by the owners of the statues because they don't want to promote whatever the statue is. How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess my personal view, which I guess isn't much different from my kind of official view, is that statues are about reverence. They're about there's a saying, putting somebody on a pedestal. I mean, it's honoring somebody in a way that you want them to be revered and remembered and everything. And as history goes on and as time goes on, we gotta it's inevitable that we revisit some of these things. And I remember when, not long after I first moved to the DC area, my parents came to visit, and we were walking around Old Town Alexandria, which is in Virginia, Northern Virginia, across the Potomac River. And my mom loves history. I love history too, but my mom really loves history. She sees a plaque with an explanation on something, she will stop and read the plaque.
My dad's the same way.
Yeah. And so she saw that. It was like, what's that statue? And there was this statue facing away from us in the middle of this traffic circle. And so we went down there and looked at it, and it was some Confederate general. And, I grew up in San Diego, 6th generation Californian. My mother grew up in Texas, but she, her family is immigrants from Mexico. And, we just weren't exposed to the reverence for the Confederacy. Californians are taught that the South was wrong, so it was kind of a jarring and unusual experience for us, and I guess we've kind of caught up to that for everybody. And I mentioned my husband being training as a deacon in the Episcopal Church, Washington National Cathedral, which is an Episcopal cathedral here in Washington D.C., the famous one, the ones in all the movies and TV shows and everything. They have a bunch of stained glass windows honoring different things, and one of them that they had was honoring, at least at the time, what they considered post-Civil War reconciliation between the North and the South. And so this stained glass window had the U.S. flag and the Confederate flag, and they had Abe Lincoln and General Lee and some other figures and everything. And at the time, arguably, at least, I think there's a lot of historians that make a case going otherwise, but arguably this was about the country coming back together and healing those wounds and everything. And so it was viewed as a rightful object of venerance and reverence, rather, to be put in this very important building. Nowadays, we look at that very differently. We look at the South very differently. We look at General Lee very differently. We look at the Confederacy very, very differently. And, I think there was an argument that was made for a while that what the South was doing was about something other than the preservation of bondage of millions and millions of people. But I think we know better now that is what it was about. And so they made the tough decision, and it was incredibly controversial within the Episcopal community of Washington, D.C. To remove that stained glass window. And those are the types of decisions and stuff that that kind of, now, that was a couple of years ago. Now kind of it seems like everywhere is having these debates and these discussions. And I think we ought to have them. And there's this park in Lithuania or Latvia or somewhere that has all of the Lenin statues that they tore down all over the country after the fall of communism. And some guy decided to make some money on it. And, he offered to haul away all the statues that people didn't want of Lenin and Stalin and all of that. And so he took them and put them in a park and charges admission on them. I don't know. We could do something like that. Somebody wants to step up and do it. There's a lot of statues that people are trying to get rid of right now. So there's potentially a money-making opportunity. But,
good argument for lower taxes.
Yeah.
That revenue can come out of our taxes.
It's up to a person or a community or a building or whoever to decide who they want to revere. And if they want to change that, that's entirely up to them. And already National Cathedral, I mean, they're on to the next discussion now, because there's a crypt and a tomb right there on the main floor there to Woodrow Wilson. He's buried there in National Cathedral. And so already there's the discussion now that maybe Woodrow Wilson wasn't such a great person that he used to be. And this is not news to libertarians. Libertarians know what a despicable, racist, warmonger Woodrow Wilson was. But, the rest of the country is kind of catching up to us on that.
Yeah, that I think enters a gray area when it comes to like their place of rest.
Yeah.
Because
I saw a story today about Mount Rushmore. That's probably going to cross the line for a lot of Americans.
Because all four of those people are terrible. Like, those are like some of the worst presidents we've had. I mean, I personally rank Lincoln as our worst president. He was the most communist president we've ever seen. Like,
I put Franklin Pierce as worse than him, but
okay.
he is a terrible person. LBJ also pretty bad too. But I've been to Mount Rushmore. A lot of people have. Mount Rushmore was kind of deliberately put where it was as kind of an FU to Native Americans. At least that's how a lot of Native Americans view it. And then again, it's probably in the top 10 list of the things people associate with America. So it's a much harder question.
In the National Treasure movies. Like,
yeah.
I've been there. It was kind of cool.
Did you go to Crazy Horse?
No.
So there's a monument to Native Americans that's kind of half finished and will forever be half finished because they're kind of not able to get the money to finish it. It's not far from that site, but nobody knows about that. And that's always
I wanted to go there, but I was 13 at the time, and so I got outvoted by the older folks in the vehicle. But I personally, I also saw this conversation come up a decent amount this week of should we blow up Mount Rushmore? And every time I saw it, I chimed in with no, we should return the land to the Native Americans who own it, and they can do whatever they want with it. If they want to charge us admission to go see it, sure. If they want to blow it up, cool. I'm all for it any which way. Have at it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
It's interesting in the last government shutdown, all the national parks closed. This ploy has a name. It's actually called the Washington Monument Phenomenon, where the story, I guess, comes from when the National Park Service was threatened with a budget cut. They responded to the people trying to cut their budget and said, well, if you cut your budget, we've looked at everything. We're already saving money in so many other places. The only thing we can do is reduce the hours at the Washington Monument. And of course, we can't have that. So their budget cut was avoided. And so it's just this idea of putting the most ridiculous, sacrosanct, politically implausible cut on the table as your first one to avoid a budget cut. So that's why in government shutdowns, they close all the national parks and all the monuments and everything. Here in Washington, D.C., they actually put up barricades around the monuments which normally, I mean, there's no
Wouldn't that cost money?
Oh yeah, it costs money too. But they do that because that's the point that they're trying to make. That well, we got to shut down the monuments because the government's out of money. And so they did this last time, and the state of Arizona took over the Grand Canyon and operated it. The state of South Dakota took over Mount Rushmore and operated it, and there were a couple other examples of states kind of stepping up and doing it. So even that ploy doesn't really work anymore because if it's important, someone steps in. Sorry,
we couldn't have
now gone through all my Mount Rushmore stories. So
too bad we couldn't have kept that under state control.
Yeah, there's no reason not to. Yeah.
If you can't afford to keep it open, then don't. Yeah. And then you can cut our federal income tax, and everybody wins.
That Arizona and South Dakota gave, which was a very true one, is these tourist attractions are so important for our local economy that we need to have them open, and yet of course we're subsidizing them through the federal budget.
Yeah. So if they really cared about it, they would pay for it themselves, as your story illustrates. They do.
Yep.
So let's just let them have at it.
Yeah, nobody's worried for anybody on a platform to close the Grand Canyon, though. So.
No, unfortunately not. Yeah. I mean, maybe Adam Kokesh.
Yeah. Well, he would devolve it. So.
Right. Yeah. Return it to the states or to whoever.
Yeah.
Totally fine with that. I do credit him. I don't like him as a candidate, but I credit him a lot with him being like the most logical anarchist I've ever met. Mm-hmm. Like he actually has like a really solid platform and idea base and timeline for closing the federal government, and he has an answer for most of the questions. And most anarchists can't do that.
He, I was on his show a couple months ago. I've talked to him a lot because he was at a lot of the state conventions that I was at. And man, if you ever get a chance, I mean, you've talked to him, but if you've never been able to talk to Adam about, what veterans go through and the experience and all that, and what libertarian society, libertarian government could mean for veterans and making sure that they're not forgotten and not behind, and absolutely take that opportunity because it is eye-opening. He's obviously somebody that's experienced that firsthand. And, it's something that's dear to me. My father was in Vietnam, and it basically scarred him for the rest of his life. I think he passed away a couple of years ago, but I think we're still fighting the Veterans Administration over what they should have done and what they should have compensated him for and all that stuff over his lifetime. It's just a really shame that whenever we rush to war, the tale of having to take care of the people that we send over there is it's not even on the radar screen. It's something that is dealt with long afterwards and neglected. And that's just kind of the top line stuff. He tells viscerally and personally about some of those experiences. And I bet he gets a lot of people to be libertarian just by telling some of those stories and telling about what a difference that we could make if based on how the Republicans and Democrats run things.
I am the only non-military male member of my family. All my uncles, or all but one of my uncles, both of my grandfathers, all my great uncles, all my greats. I come from a long line of military people. My mom's an Army brat, my dad's a Marine. So I've unfortunately had to witness firsthand the terrible thing that is the VA. My grandpa's had quite a lot of health problems throughout my lifetime. He's 85, something like that now. So I've spent many days in a VA hospital.
It's a disgrace.
Terrible.
It's a disgrace.
Yeah. And I've been able to, the last time he had a heart attack about 3 years ago, I was at that point a member of the Libertarian Party. Up until then, I just sat there and I was like, this is terrible. How could we fix this? And then that last time I got to sit there and literally talk to him while he was sitting there healing after his operation. Just be like, wouldn't it be great if this wasn't so terrible? And
Yeah.
I had policy platform in my head to talk to him about, and talk to the nurses about, and I was just sitting there like a little libertarian evangelical kid. I was 18, so it's nice to have a way to a solution in mind finally. And I think a lot of people in America are searching for that option, and they're not really seeing us because we're being shut down by so many different sources. And I think we could really show people a better America if we were given a chance.
Yeah, I mean, we can bring a lot of stuff to the table, because I mean, there's not a libertarian that doesn't think about stuff like that whenever there's some rush to war. And I just finished an LBJ biography. I'm working on a Nixon biography, and Vietnam's obviously a big theme in both of those books. And no, I mean the decision-making process, and it was a decision-making process. There were arguments for, arguments against, data, computers, the decision to go into, every incremental step we took in Vietnam was heavily litigated, and it's all in the records and everything. And, internally in the administration, and Johnson said yes to every escalation, and Nixon said yes to every escalation. Johnson had one person at the table arguing that this was a mistake, and quickly got rid of him when he got tired of hearing about it. And Nixon didn't really have anybody making those cases. And it took until basically the last 2 years of the war, which went on for years and years and years and years, before Congress found its voice. And that was only because Americans were rioting in the streets about it. That finally motivated them to do something about it. And I don't know. This is why I said LBJ ahead of some of the other names that you said, because I went to his presidential library in Texas not long ago, and they do kind of skip over some of this stuff in their exhibits on President Johnson, which I guess their job is to venerate him. So that's, and it's they're a private entity. They can do that if they want, and but that he just kind of, all right, let's send in 150,000 Americans. Let's send in another 75,000 and another 75,000, without any kind of recognition of not only the present day human cost at the time, but also the long tail of damage it would inflict on probably millions of family members and friends and veterans who came back, and then the ones who didn't come back. It's really astonishing. And this wasn't one of those things, like maybe the Iraq War was just, we had the wrong people in the room making some bad decisions or whatever. But Vietnam really was, it was probably the smartest people in the country in the room making that decision to go in there. And it was just kind of wrong in every respect. So, man, I want libertarians in government because this is what you get otherwise.
I wanted to ask one more question before we wrap up. I know we talked about how the LP chooses their VP, and it's not like this. But if you were the Libertarian presidential candidate and you got to choose your VP,
I'm the presidential candidate? I'm not a good presidential candidate. You know all right. So what's your hypothetical? I'm the presidential candidate, and what?
And who would you choose as your VP if it wasn't up to the delegates?
Like of current people, like I can't make up somebody or whatever. It's
somebody that's either active in politics or the LP or just your life. Or
well, I will get past fighting the hypothetical in a moment, but like I live in DC. You really shouldn't have a presidential candidate who lives in DC. I'm short and nerdy and and focused on internal I think I would make a very good White House chief of staff. So if anybody watching is ever elected president and wants a libertarian as a chief of staff, I'm happy to do that or consider that. But getting past me fighting the hypothetical on that, let's see. Well, I think we could really use. So, I'm kind of an insider-y. I work in the halls of power and connect people with each other and all of that. So I think we could really use somebody with a lot of private sector experience, or experience, in local government or state government or something like that. So, I guess, and it's really, to me, it's really important that the presidential running mates, above all, that they're able to work together and complement each other on their backgrounds and their diversity of experience and everything. So I guess someone like maybe Lauren Doherty, who's a libertarian in Texas, and she's in the private sector right now, doing very well for herself, running a number of very amazing initiatives. She's run for Justice of the Peace before. She's very active in the Texas Libertarian Party. We get along very well together, and we're always giving each other advice on different things. More her giving me advice, and so I think we'd make an awesome ticket if I was remotely the appropriate person, which I'm not. So.
Fair enough. I would probably have answered that question slightly similarly. But as we wrap up, I want to give you
Spike. I do have to say, Spike Cohen is an excellent vice presidential running mate. I'm glad we picked him.
I do like him. He has done a great job. Like I said earlier, I didn't support him at all in his candidacy, but since he's become the nominee, I have been very happy with what I've heard about him and what I've seen from him, and the unity that image shows.
Some libertarians have maybe only had like a fleeting interaction with him, and maybe, I really do recommend watch one of his longer form videos, or if you do get a chance, have a dialogue with him or a conversation with him. I think
if you're watching Spike, you can come on the show. That'd be
cool.
Yeah. But all right, as we wrap up, I want to give you another chance to kind of short elevator pitch your platform and give out your handles and your website and how people can get a hold of you.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of organizations out there to advance different libertarian goals, and many of them are amazing. I've worked with a lot of them. They do a lot of great work. Only the Libertarian Party is able to elect libertarians to public office, and that's where I want to put the focus of our resources at the National Committee. So there's projects like the Frontier Project, where candidates have to run and raise their own money, but the Libertarian Party is able to provide data tools, door knocking help, phone banking help, messaging and strategic advice to help get state legislators elected. And it's been too long since we've elected libertarians to state legislators. And then once we're able to do that, we can build on those lessons and run people in more states, run people for higher office. Because ultimately, I want a libertarian caucus in the Senate large enough to block every bad idea and help pass every good idea in American public policy. And how do we get that? We get that by electing libertarian House members, and we get that by electing libertarian mayors and state legislators and county board members. And so we got to start somewhere, and that's where I want to focus. And in order to do those elections, we need good campaign training programs at our state affiliates and at the national level. We need data tools where we're able to target voters and be able to get funding, raise money, being able to help provide opportunities for our activists to get involved and make themselves known. And most of all, have national leadership that respects our members, respects our activists, and is able to keep it all going and has the trust of people to make it happen. So I'm running for national chair because I'm impatient for all that to happen. I'm eager to get to work to start making it happen, because I want to be able to work with all of you together to build our party to win. And check out more at winwithjoe.org.
Right. That was a beautiful, like 1 minute pitch.
Off the cuff. So I've done this a couple times, I guess.
Couple. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show. Good luck in everything that you're doing,
Likewise.
especially with the new job. That sounds exciting.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already seen it, this week's episode is up on YouTube right now. Show all dedicated to Senator Rand Paul. Lots of amazing things going on in the Senate right now, so check that out. And I will see you guys back here next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Fight for Liberty. And if you want to donate to this channel, go to patreon.com/fightforliberty and become a monthly donor or just a one-time donor, whichever you choose. It's up to you, but we appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.